Well, welcome back again to So Opinionated. Hi guys, it's Cassim. Just want to firstly start off by thanking you very much for watching, and I hope that I can share something with you today that can add some value to your life and can help you become a higher, fuller expression of who you're capable of becoming. I want to talk about three different topics today. I want to talk about what leads a man to depression and the three things you can look out for to identify if a man is depressed or if a man is on that path of depression. The second thing that I want to share with you guys is the life-changing decisions that a man can make, and I want to highlight the word decisions, because they are decisions and a man has to make them, and if a man makes these decisions, then they will alter the course of his life, and they can allow him to live one of the most abundant kind of lives. And the third one that I want to talk about is I want to talk about how to find inspiration. But to begin off with, let's go with the first one, which is the things that can lead a man to depression. By the way, guys, as usual, if you find some of the things that I'm going to share with you today useful, you know what to do, and you want to join our community, you know what to do. Jump on our YouTube channel, subscribe to it. That's where we put most of our content, and would love for you to join the community. Okay, so let's go into it. The three keys that lead a man to depression. So whenever I meet a guy and the guy is depressed, or a guy is feeling really low, or a guy feels like he's a failure, or a guy feels like his life in disarray, there's three things that I'm always looking for. And the reason why I'm sharing these with you is because I was sharing these with a girl recently, actually, who was asking me about males and was asking me about guys and some advice on guys. So they all actually begin with C, and the three things that I look for are competence, competition, and contribution. So here they go. Let me run them down for you. So the first thing that I'm always looking for is competence. If a man says to me he's really low, feeling down, his life isn't very good at the moment, maybe he's even feeling suicidal or whatever, obviously, as usual, I always say to them, you need to go and seek professional help, etc. But if I was giving him advice and he's already doing all the other things, one of the first areas that I would tell him to look at is his competence. Competence is, at the center of it, is the word control. In other words, I'm trying to ascertain how much control does this guy have in his life. How many different areas of his life does this man or this male feel like he has control over? And a lot of the time, if you look at a guy and you observe a guy's life, you will tend to notice that if he's unhappy, he will feel that there is a lot of things in his life which he doesn't have control over. And a lot of the time, that comes down to the very simple principle of accountability, right? We know that people who take responsibility, people who take accountability, have a higher success rate and a higher locus of control, right? We know that if you say that no matter what happens to you, that I will do whatever is necessary, I will become whoever I need to become, I will learn whatever I need to learn, that your chances of you becoming successful increase dramatically. And so if you ever meet a guy and is depressed, one of the first signs that you're looking for in his life is how much competence does he have? How many areas of his life does he feel that he's really good? If I'm ever coaching somebody, or if I'm ever giving somebody advice face to face, one of the first areas that I always share with guys that they want to get competence in is their body, right? If you've ever noticed, and if you've ever actually studied people who are at the top of what they do, I'm talking about CEOs, directors, the top salespeople in organizations, you will tend to find that the vast majority of them have a direct correlation with how successful they are and how competent they are with their health, right? Usually, and I say usually because there's always an exception to every rule, right? Usually you will tend to find that the CEO or the managing directors, all of those kinds of individuals at the higher echelons of life, are very active. They go for runs, they're bodybuilders, they do some kind of marathons. There is a direct correlation between how much exercise a person does, or how many things a person does that are in his control, and how happy that person is. And so what I always share with like clients and people who I give advice is the easiest place to gain competence is your body. Start feeling, doing things that are going to improve your health. Eat healthy things. Go to the gym. Go for a run. Look, the reality is, guys, nobody can stop you from running around the park that you live near. Even if you have kids, you can still wake up half an hour earlier and go run around the block or run around a field near where you live. So that's always the first thing that I say to Guy. I'm always looking for how competent is this individual. The second thing that I'm looking for is competition. At the center of the word competition is the word belonging, meaning that guys need to feel like we're part of the gang. We need to feel like we're part of, we need to feel like there is somewhere where we belong, right? Away from our missus, away from our family. That's why you tend to find that a lot of males, and again, I always say there's an exception to every rule, okay? A lot of guys will tend to be into football, they'll tend to be into golf, they'll tend to be involved in like motorbikes, they tend to have a passion for cars, they'll tend to have a passion for anything to do with magazines or anything to do with hair or anything to do with I don't know, traveling. But essentially, men have an inclination and a really strong desire to find places where essentially we can compete, okay? And competition is really about finding where we belong. So if a man's feeling really low and is feeling really depressed and is unhappy with his life, I'm always looking for how much competition does this guy experience in his life. And again, if I'm talking one-to-one and I'm giving someone advice or I'm coaching them, the first thing that I always ask that person is who their peers are. Who are this person's peers? Because a lot of people, and I don't want to get into too deep into this, but most people, if you look at their life, they're usually in their clique, in their groups, they're usually the cleverest, the loudest, the most confident, the most good looking. They might say they're not, but the reality of the truth is they are. Okay? Now, obviously, that's a subjective thing to be talking about, but you understand the point that I'm trying to get at here, okay? Usually, if you've got a group of people who are all into football, there will typically be one person who knows way more about football than everybody else in that entire group, right? If you've got somebody who's into Formula One, there will typically be loads of people who know about Formula One, but there'll be one person who knows way more about Formula One than everybody else. So what I would say to that person is, okay, we need to get you around people who are considerably better than you, know way more than you do. Because the natural inclination that human beings have is that we rise to whoever is around us. Okay? Now, if you are the top, what tends to happen is, right, if you know more than everybody else, if you're more active than everybody else, if you are more knowledgeable, if you're more skillful, what tends to happen is your skill level goes down to the degree and the level of the people around you. But if you're around people who are above you, who are better than you, who know more about an area than you, you will naturally want to get better. And that's where that competition aspect kicks in, right? But also you find where you belong. You find where your home is. A lot of people who are depressed or unhappy, at the center of their life is that they don't know where they belong. They don't know to what clique they operate in. They don't know who gets them, who understands them. So that's the second thing. The third C is contribution. At the center of the word contribution, what we're looking for is providing. So providing, men, as most of you will know, we have a natural inclination to provide. Okay, we want to provide. I always say to people, funny enough, when I was talking to this girl, and I was giving her this advice, one of the things that I said to her is guys, everything that guys do in some way or another is motivated by sex. Okay, a guy cleans his room for what reason? because a girl's coming over? Why does a guy get his hair cut? He gets his hair cut because he wants to look good. Why? Because he wants to attract women. Okay, for what reason? So he can in some way get laid or get love or whatever it may be. Why does a guy try to get a really nice car? Why? Because some way or another he's going to show that to women that he's got a really nice car and that he's whatever. Why would a guy go and get a really high paying job? Why? Because it will attract women. In some way or another, at the center of most of the motivations that men have, we are trying to in some way basically attract women. Now, obviously, that is an oversimplification and an overgeneralization. And again, there is always an exception to every rule. But I tell you this so that you get it, so that you understand it. And what I would say to you is, when a guy finds something where he can provide, when a guy finds an area where he is making a contribution, that is where his happiness goes up. So a lot of the time, you tend to find that a lot of guys who are depressed have no girlfriends, right? And one of the things that they complain about is, I'm alone. I don't get laid. You see this rhetoric? I hear it all the time from people who are unhappy with their lives, right? And so the easiest thing that I say to people is, if you cannot find if you don't have a girlfriend and you have nobody to help, to provide to, what you do is you go and help people in the area that you yourself are suffering in, that you yourself are hurting. In other words, learn as much as you can. Let's just use, for example, the example that you are struggling with getting a girlfriend. This is what you do. You start studying everything that you can about your struggle to get a girlfriend, and you just start sharing it. You can share it through journaling. You can share it with your friends. You can share it on YouTube. But in some way or another, you find a medium, you find a portal to share what you have learnt and the difficulties that you've been through, to share with other people. There is a reason why books are written. What are books all about? Autobiographies particularly. Autobiographies are about people who've lived lives and they've experienced life and they've suffered and they've achieved their dreams and then they put it down on paper, right? Now, most of us obviously don't really think on that level because we don't think we're authors, and there's all kinds of psychological problems that we would need to overcome before we get to the point of even ever daring to think that we could write an autobiography or even a book. But you get the point of what I'm saying. So those three things, just to run them down. Number one, competence. How many areas does this guy feel really competent in? How many areas of his life is this guy good at stuff? Secondly is competition. Does this guy know where he belongs? Does he have a group, a clique? Does he have a place where people get him, where he knows a lot of information, where he's constantly being challenged, where he can compete, where he can have banter? And the third one is contribution, which asks, does this guy have somewhere or a place, or does he have a mission? Does he have a purpose? Does he have something which is beyond himself, which is he's fighting for, which is trying to provide, which is trying to in some way improve? So those are the three keys that I wanted to share with you. I hope that they add some value to your life and in some way they can be useful. Look at them, examine them in your own life if you're feeling a bit low, and I hope that they're useful for you. Okay, so that takes us to the second thing that I want to talk about, which is I want to talk about how to find inspiration. And I've wrote down a couple of things here that I thought would be useful in trying to find inspiration, and I hope you guys can find it useful. Okay, so if you want to find inspiration, this is the first thing that I would say to you. The first thing that I would say to you is desire it. Right? And I know this sounds really ridiculous and almost stupid, kind of like, what do you mean, Cass? Well, of course, I desire to find inspiration. But actually, a lot of people don't desire to find inspiration. You can't find something which you're not looking for, right? Now, I know you could say, well, Cassim, sometimes people get lucky. Yeah, but we're not talking about luck here. We're talking about you finding inspiration. So the first thing that I would share with you is actually make a concerted effort to want to find it, You know, and let me explain to you a little bit what I mean by this. My brother who plays for England was saying to me that Cassim, because I was asking him, what's the difference between people who play football on a normal, I don't know, on a normal football court and in their local field or in their local team, what's the difference between them and people who play for England? Or people who play in the Premier League, or people who play in the Champions League, or in a World Cup? What's the difference? And he said to me, Cassim, the difference is the level of seriousness. If you're playing at, let's say, League One level, the level of seriousness is very different to if you're playing in the World Cup. You're just more serious. It's more, the intensity is up, the expectation is up, everything is anted, everything is expanded, everything is magnified. The higher up that success route, you begin to go up. And in the same principle, what I would say to you is, if you want to find inspiration, you have to up the ante. It's got to be something that you're actually expecting. You've got to move away from being an amateur and you've got to move into being a professional. So that's the first thing. Second thing is you want to begin to flow with life. What does that mean? So a lot of people, what we tend to do in life is we tend to fight what comes into our lives. Meaning that a lot of us actually have opportunities presented to us all the time, but we say things like, well, I'm not that kind of person. I don't have that kind of skill. I don't hang around with those people. Those people don't speak like me. Well, they're weird. Well, they're strange. Well, I've never really liked speaking. And what ends up happening is that we miss opportunities, because a lot of us, we presume that if something isn't within our domain of competence, as meaning that it isn't something within our view, then why would we go after it? Why would we want to have friendships with people who are the opposite religion as us, right? But what tends to happen is, as you start meeting people who are the opposite religion to you, and I'm using this metaphorically, of course, what happens is your view, your peripheral actually widens, because the perspective that they're going to teach you is going to expand the perspective that you have. The information that they're going to share with you is going to expand the information that you have. And so what it does is your world gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. A bit like a balloon, right? When you first blow up a balloon, there's not much air. But the more you blow up the balloon, the more it expands and it expands and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what happens when you start taking opportunities. Let me put it how Steve Jobs once put it. Steve Jobs said that you cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? So you have to trust that things are going to work out. Meaning, look, if you meet somebody and let's just, I don't know, let's take the example of someone like me. Obviously, I do a lot of speaking. So let's just say I meet somebody and someone says to me, Cassim, I'd love to kind of have a interview with you. I'd love to have a podcast with you. Now, the person who wants to have a podcast with me is in a topic which is all about gaming. Clearly, I'm not in the gaming subject, right? Most of my talks are all to do with self-improvement. But I don't know where that's going to lead, okay? Because what might end up happening is that I may end up talking to him about gaming and learning all kinds of things from him and how he made his business successful. Somebody might be watching that gaming and is also feeling depressed, and they've just heard that actually what I do is that I speak about success and I speak about personal development and how to improve your life or how to quit your addiction with gaming. And then all of a sudden they start getting in contact with me. Do you see what I mean? You don't actually know where decisions are going to take you until you've made them, right? Until you've actually lived them out. And so what I would share with you is, if you want to begin to find inspiration, start flowing with life. Go with the flow of the river. Don't try and swim against the flow of the river. Don't try and swim upstream. Okay, go with the flow, follow it, go with it, find the grooves, meaning find opportunities. Even if it doesn't feel like it's you or is going to bring you instant results right now, Still go with it, because everything in one way or another is connected. Everything. You may not be able to see the reason why today, but in years to come, you will understand why it worked out, or why you needed to meet that person. The third key that I would share with you is to really connect with your heart. So I actually put down here to be quiet, breathe, and reconnect with your heart. And what I mean by that is that you want to actually engage your heart into stuff, meaning that you actually want to be present. Now, I know this sounds almost ridiculous, and you're probably thinking, well, Cassim, I am present, I am conscious. But actually, I've come to realize that a lot of us aren't really conscious. A lot of us are not really present. A lot of us aren't really living in the here and now, right? I talk a lot about the fact that most people are either spend most of their life looking backwards at what happened, who did what to them, what didn't work out, the mistakes they've made, or they spend a lot of their time being pulled side by side by distractions, by people, by what expectations, by this, by their workplace, by their mum, by their sister. There's always someone pulling at them. Or you get people who are looking into the future and fearing it and worrying about it. And a lot of people are never actually sit in reality. They never just sit there and accept the world as it exists, as it actually is. And when you begin to do that, all of a sudden you begin to see what is actually happening. Funnily enough, I was watching a film last night, and I was making some notes about this film yesterday. And one of the things that I was writing down, which I wasn't planning on talking about today, which is probably why I'm now not going to be able to find the note that I wrote. But one of the things that I was making notes on is, here it is, that much of making a good life is about seeing the world as others see it and knowing their truth. And what I meant by that is, in order to really live a remarkable life, most of the things that make life remarkable are the small stuff. Most of us think that what makes life amazing is when I get married, when I get a brand new job, when I become a millionaire. But actually, that's not really what makes life spectacular. What makes life spectacular is when somebody remembers your birthday and they send you a birthday card and you receive it. What makes life spectacular is when somebody says to you, will you be my god brother or my godfather for my child? What makes life spectacular is when you remember somebody's favorite meal, and then maybe they're feeling really down, and then you order them that favorite meal. That stuff is what really makes the magic of life. And the thing is, you can't even realize that stuff and pay attention to that stuff and recognize that stuff unless you're in the present, unless you're actually attuned to who you are. And so a lot of that work means that you have to sit within yourself and see life as it actually is. Not as you would have liked it to be, not as you want it to be, but as it actually sits here right now. Meaning, if you're depressed, if you're unhappy, if your weight is not, sit with that. Sit with it. Stop trying to say, well, I could improve it or it might change. No, just sit with it for a minute. Because when you begin to sit with it for a minute, your brain actually has time to rest so that it can pay attention to what is actually happening around it. So that's the second thing that I would share with you. The third thing that I would share with you. The fourth thing that I would share with you is to start journaling. What does journaling mean? Journaling means you want to start to write down the connections and the patterns which you've begun to recognize in life. Life has signs, life has lessons, life has all of these kind of impulses that it shows you, all of these kinds of clues that it guides you and keeps pointing you towards. Life has these signs that is constantly saying, pay attention, go this way, don't go that way, this isn't working. I was saying to someone the other day They were saying to me, Cassim, I have a migraine. And I said to them, oh, right, okay, well, that's not a problem. That's not the actual problem. And they said, what do you mean? I said to them, your migraine isn't the problem. Your migraine is your body telling you that something you're either doing or not doing is making your body come out of balance. It's making your brain only produces pain when it has no other way to inform you that something that you're doing isn't working, right? And a lot of us, we tend to not actually pay attention to it. We'll have the headache and we will never go to the source of the headache to determine, why am I feeling a migraine? Why is my body telling me not to do this, right? A lot of us will be in a job and every day we wake up, we don't want to go to the job, right? And we don't realize that that is life telling us this is teaching us something about us, is teaching us a lesson, is trying to give us signs, but a lot of people don't pay attention to that. But when you start journaling, when you start this is part of the reason why I tell people to journal, right? And I have the journal entries that I share with people, because when you start writing down, okay, what have I learned this week? What is working? What isn't working? What is success? What makes a good life? What am I experiencing? How am I feeling? What are my friendships like? When you begin to write all of these kinds of things down, you begin to pay attention to your life. You begin to observe things. You begin to notice that you're making the same mistakes over and over and over again. You begin to notice that certain things that you keep doing keep bringing you success. And when you begin to do that, inspiration is going to come out of nowhere where you didn't even realize you had inspiration. And so that's what I would share with you. The other thing that I would share with you is to read. When you begin to read, and when I talk about reading, that's really just a medium or a vehicle that you can use. But you can start not only reading, but you can start skilling yourself. You can start getting educated. But essentially, you want to begin, the key word really is grow. You want to begin to grow yourself. Because as you begin to grow yourself, the way you see the world, the information that you have will allow you to become more creative. It will give you more options. Things are going to open up into your life that you didn't have before. And the more that you begin to do that, the more life begins to open up to you and begins to unfold in front of you. And so one of the things that I would be asking myself, if you're somebody who's looking for inspiration, is how much growing are you actually doing? Because part of finding inspiration is finding opportunity, right? And to find opportunity and not be ready for it is one of the quickest ways to get frustrated with life, to become bitter and resentful. When an opportunity, you could have invested in Bitcoin, but you didn't have the money, right? You could have been with that person, but mentally you weren't ready. That is what leads people to bitterness, to anger, and to resentment. Because they keep saying, when am I going to get mine? But what they do is that they're not prepared to put in the work first. They're not prepared to sow. They're not prepared to plant so that later on they can get the crop. And what I would share with you is, if you can start growing, if you can start journaling, if you can start looking at yourself, pay attention to life, these keys will put you on the stepping stone to be able to find the inspiration that you're looking for. And I hope that they add some value to your life. So that leads us to the last thing that I want to share with you today, which I talked a little bit about earlier on, which is around this concept of life-changing decisions that a man can make. Now, I shared with you earlier on that at the beginning of this show today, that the key word when it comes to life-changing decisions is decisions. Is you actually have to make these decisions. The decisions I'm going to share with you today don't just happen by accident. These are decisions that you can make which will change the trajectory of your life, that will change the way you see life, the way in which you respond and interact with people. But ultimately, you've got to do most of the work. Ultimately, you've got to take most of the steps here. And the decision starts with you, right? Remember that miracles do not just happen by accident. They're usually triggered by something. There is momentum that has already began, and then they're activated. So is success. So is magic, right? That's what the first thing that I would share with you. So let's go into this. The first thing that I would share with you, which can be a life-changing decision, is to begin to live a life of integrity. What does a life of integrity mean? A life of integrity means that your words and your actions match. Now, I was actually talking to somebody. No, I was coaching a guy. That's where this came from. So I was coaching a guy who is a personal trainer. And he was saying to me, Cassim, 2020 business has been very bad, and I haven't been able to grow my business. And I was saying to him, oh, right, that's really interesting. Have you thought about coaching people online? And he said, no, I can't coach people online because, Cass, that's just, I'm not really good at that kind of stuff. And I said, well, why don't you learn? There's loads of courses online. There's loads of YouTube things online. You can figure out how to do it. Right, you can figure out how to put your classes online. You can figure out how to grow your audience online. Why don't you go down that route? And he was like, well, Cass, I haven't really even myself worked out in like a year. And I said to him, one of the things that you have is that you are not practicing what you preach. Because I said to him, if you had a client in front of you and your client said to you that, they're not really feeling like it and they're not really sure what to do, what would you say to them? And he said, well, I'll tell them you've got to get better, all this kind of stuff. And I said, but you're not doing that stuff, which means that you are teaching people stuff that you yourself don't live by. And so what I would share with you, as using that as a metaphor, is, a lot of you guys are listening to me and you're saying, well, Cassim, the government shouldn't be like this. Well, Cassim, schooling is terrible. Well, Cassim, I can't seem to get a home, or interest rates are high, or whatever this and that. But the question is, are you doing anything about it? What actions are you taking? You talk about people being prejudiced, but are you prejudiced, right? Would somebody else see you as prejudiced? And I tell you this because so many people I meet say this stuff to me. Oh, Cassim, I'm going to be successful. Oh, Cassim, people are so lazy. But when you examine their life, they're doing the very things that they're telling people not to do. They're doing the very things that they complain to people that people shouldn't be doing, or that people do too much, or that people do too little. And so the first thing that I would share with you, if you really want to change your life, like in a remarkable way, is begin to live a life of integrity. Ensure that the things that you say, you back them up with your actions. Second thing that I would share with you is to use your life to help other people suffer less. What I mean by this is most of us, and again, I'm generalizing here, but there's always an exception to every rule, but most people, their life is not about they don't live from a place of how can I serve the world. They're looking and living from a place of how can the world serve me? How much money can I earn? How much more can I travel? How much happier can I become? It's all an ego game. It's all about me. And what happens is when you begin to shift the way you operate your life from you asking what can they do for me and what can they give for me, and you start asking what can I give you, how can I help you, how can I help you suffer less, how can I help you improve your life, remarkable things begin to happen in your life. And I wonder, in the last 6 months, how many people have you been going round to and asking them, how can I help you, how can I serve you, what can I do for you? Looking for ways in which you can use your life as a vehicle to improving other people's lives, to helping other people suffer less. Suffering means that somebody gets out of debt, somebody finds a relationship, somebody improves their relationship, somebody has better vitality in their health, emotionally, spiritually. Somebody manages to get a pay increase or into a managerial position. How many people behind you are you helping to suffer less? right? Because suffering comes from we want this, but we're here. The gap is where suffering begins, is where suffering takes place. In that gap of I want this, but I'm here. This bit here is where all the pain and the suffering happens. So your job is to close this gap so that the person suffers less. But a lot of people are even oblivious, and we're so focused on how much I'm feeling and how what I haven't got and how not enough I am, that we never actually open our view and begin to look at what everybody else is experiencing. And the funny thing about looking to serve is, and I'll put it how Zig Ziglar said it. Zig Ziglar said, if you will help enough people get what they want, you can have everything that you want. What I mean by that is, when you help other people, when you find a way, and as I say, the key word here is to find a way. When you find a way to help other people get what they want, naturally, by default, you will also get what you want. But the majority of us have not been taught to think like that. But I ask you to be different. That's why I said it's a choice to do this. Number 3 is to mentor a young person to reach their potential. Most of you know, particularly if you've watched my journal entries, that I talk a lot about the fact that you cannot call yourself a success until you have a successor. And one of the things that begins to happen, particularly begins to happen in quite a dramatic way for people, is usually when they have children or when they decide to mentor a young person. Because children will challenge you on every front. Essentially what kids do is kids become mirrors of us. Because kids, you know, if you've been a parent, one of the things that you will know is, if you tell your child to do something and then you go and not to do something or to do something, and then you go and do the very thing or don't do the very thing, guess what? Children will catch you instantly. They'll pick you up on it, right? So they become mirrors of you. And so a lot of people obviously don't have children, and some people may never have children in their life. And what ends up happening is most of us never get to the point where we actually mentor somebody behind us. Much of mentoring is about actually learning about ourselves. You know, there is some notes that I've been making on parenting, on the role of a parent. And one of the things that I've been writing as I've been making these notes is that becoming a parent is really about the child helping you to become more of yourself. The child will test you on your anger. The child will test you on your empathy. The child will test you on your ability to look at different angles. Why is this baby crying? I've given the baby milk. I've changed the baby's nappy. You have to see from so many different angles. You have to think about the future. You have to think about planning. You have to think about, okay, if we're going to go for a walk, I've got to think about snacks. I've got to think about food. I've got to think about nappies. I've got to think about a changing bag. I've got to think about the pram. I've got to think about the parking. I've got to think about the weather. Is it going to be too sunny? Is it going to be raining? That's what children will teach you. And the thing is, if they're not your own children, if you begin to mentor somebody who is younger, they will teach you all of these things about yourself. You will be shocked at how much you will learn about yourself when you begin to mentor young people. You will be shocked, because for a lot of us, our inclination is, well, the kid is stupid, the kid is naive. But actually, kids are the purest form of humanity that you can get. They have no prejudices yet, right? They don't have opinions. They don't have ideologies. All they're operating from is instinct. If someone feels like fearful, the kid will sense fear. They will never think twice about, and they'll cry, right? They'll never think twice to say, well, they're probably not, right? The kid will just react to how the conditions that they've been placed in and the way in which people are responding around the child. So the last thing that I wanted to share with you, which is life-changing that I have found, is to live without proof and to live based on instinct and faith. Now, this is probably the most difficult thing for a lot of you guys to really activate in your life, because it's kind of like, so you're asking me to make my decisions based on instinct, based on heart, based on faith. And I am. A lot of people, unfortunately, in their lives don't really live by this. A lot of people, we're logical and everything has to make sense and everything has to be part of the plan, right? And there is a place for that. But also, a huge amount of life is about allowing life to flow, allowing life to unfold as it will. And a lot of us are so busy trying to control everything that we never actually allow life or God or the universe to take its part. Let me put it like this for you. Let's just say we get somebody who wants to, for example, grow a plant, like some flowers. Some of us are so preoccupied with controlling the weather, controlling the water, controlling the soil, that we never just water it, give it sunlight, give it sunshine, and let it grow. Let God do, or the universe do its part. And in the same token, what I would share with you is it takes courage to live a life of faith, to live a life of instinct. But I've noticed that most of the magic of life is derived from when people follow their instinct, from when people go with the flow, from when people believe. And I would just ask you to consider for a minute whether you believe. I would ask you to consider for a minute whether you trust in your ability to figure things out, in the fact that things will work out. I don't know, something for you to think about. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I don't know whether it's been useful or not, but I hope that it has. I want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel Cassimotive on YouTube. And apart from that, I shall speak to you soon. Bye for now.